Driving is a part of what we do every day here at Elders, whether it's visiting our clients on farm, whether it's transporting livestock, or delivering product to our clients' properties. But with this everyday task comes one of the most significant and often underestimated risks that our business faces every day. Elders operates a large national fleet. We've got nearly 1,600 vehicles. Collectively, those vehicles travel 19 million kilometres per year. Believe it or not, that's the equivalent of 475 laps around the Earth. That kind of exposure carries serious implications, and unfortunately, some of our teams have experienced serious incidents and touched by tragedy. 42% of all fatalities at a workplace involve a motor vehicle. Unfortunately, in 2024, there were 84 fatalities, and for every fatality, there are 1,000 hospital admissions. Our risks at Elders are increased due to the high exposure and also the nature of the remote and rural travel. We drive in locations with a high exposure to wildlife, which results in 200 animal strikes per year. We also have staff that travel at high speeds for extended periods of time on the open freeways. And we often tow trailers and carry loads in areas with poor maintenance and unpredictable road conditions. This training program has been developed to directly address these risks. It will take you through the importance of maintaining a professional driving mindset, how to conduct effective pre-start checks, seating, steering and posture control. Also strategies for managing fatigue, distraction and difficult conditions. Remember, every incident prevented is a life protected. So let's approach this with the seriousness that it deserves, because nothing is so important that it can't be done safely.
The moment I realised it happened, it was too late.
It only takes that split second to drift across. And if you spin out of control, that's it.
It takes a split second, as I found out not long ago, to go from everything's okay to I nearly died.
Every morning when our day starts, when we put on the pink shirt and we go to work, most of us spend most of our days in cars.
I've done a lot of driving in my time at Elders, particularly in the last 12 or 15 years in the state and zone roles.
I do about 60 to 70,000 Ks a year.
My manager would do 120,000 Ks a year, easy, and I would do close to 100.
When you do that amount of kilometres, you get distracted pretty quickly.
Quite often your brain just goes into auto mode. It's not only just fatigue, it's just monotony.
I was returning from a fishing trip up to a client's property in Wentworth, heading down a straight stretch of road close to home, probably about 45 minutes, and my mother rang me. And we were having a conversation about family and everything else, and I've drifted off or zoned out with my eyes as I was driving and hit the right-hand side. The vehicle towing a boat has drifted across to the right-hand side of the road, and I've woken up with my wheel dropping onto the gravel. Jolted me, and I've been able to correct and pull back over and stop. And when I said to my mum, I just fell asleep. What was I doing? She said, "You were talking to me." It was quite surreal. Had there been a vehicle coming in the other direction, who knows how they would have reacted.
It was a normal day at work, 5 o'clock, locked up and drove home. I was coming into Benalla and the speed limit is 50 kilometres an hour, so across the train tracks and about 100 metres down the road, the next exit, someone failed to give way at a give way sign and T-boned me. It was just a turmoil of dust, explosion, everything going on. And when I come to realise what happened, I was looking into a lady's face in the oncoming traffic. If I went through that same situation 5 seconds earlier, he might have hit me straight on the driver's door.
So we're in a convoy of 3. I had a client behind me, I had my manager and a client in front of me. It was a very, very, very still afternoon, not a breath of air. And then there was this bit of a rise and I could only just see the tips of the trees over the other side. And I could see a little bit of dust. So as I was coming up over the hill, as you do, you slow down a little bit, doing about 80 Ks an hour. And just as I crested over the hill, there was this whopping great big wall of bull dust. Hit the wall of bull dust as I was braking really hard and I saw the tail light. I thought, oh shit, I'm done here. Hit the brakes as hard as I could and just, hit the back of my manager's car. He did a 360 over the other side of the tar road. That spun him and I went straight across the other side of the road and pulled up in the scrub. My vehicle was a complete write-off. I was very lucky to be alive.
So why didn't I take a rest back then? Pushing to get home, been away for 4 or 5 days, wanted to get home and see the family. Probably all the things a lot of us do and don't stop and take that break.
We sometimes take these things for granted, thinking everyone's aware and looking the same way you are. In a 50-kilometre zone, I got hit by someone from the side. Didn't see it coming.
It was a wake-up call. If at all I'm feeling tired, I will pull over and have a break, regardless of if it makes me late or not.
It's made me more aware, looking at intersections and being more aware of vehicles around me.
Oh, I drive a lot slower now. So I used to be in a bit of a rush to try and get as much as I can done, but end of the day, if you're always rushing around trying to get everything done and you hurt yourself or someone else, there's not much point to any of it, is there?
We need you there when you get there. If you don't turn up, that's when we're really in trouble. But more importantly, it's important for your own life and your own family that you get there safely.
The job's not done until you get home and you see your loved ones.
At Elders, driving is an integral part of our job. Your average agronomist could be doing as many as 50,000 Ks a year. The average stock agent as high as 75,000 Ks a year. And both of those are vastly greater than the average Aussie, only doing 15,000 Ks a year. That amount of exposure is high. 33% of all workplace fatalities are driving related. And the national road toll, 15% of all work-related crashes. That's a really staggering number. So we're going to be talking about how we can look at ways of reducing and improving our safety and risk while out on the road. Your attitude when you drive will determine so many different things. In fact, it determines everything the way you drive. The possibility of being too happy. Maybe you've had a big sale. Maybe you've got a car full of mates. Maybe the music's too high and you're just enjoying yourself too much. That also becomes a distraction. You need to bring yourself back into being a professional. Then you could be angry. Someone cut you off in traffic. These are the types of things you have to let them go and bring yourself back to being calm and measured. Another attitude problem we come across is a thing called optimism bias. That's when someone rates themselves a little higher than they should, or it won't happen to me. Attitude drives everything. It's one of the most important things to good, safe driving. Pre-start check. Why do we even bother? Well, firstly, when you take a car out onto a public road, you need to make sure that it's legal and roadworthy and safe. Every vehicle should have its own version of a pre-start check. Now, we're not talking something as detailed as you do with a truck or a forklift, but with the car, your pre-start check can be done by simply walking up to it. When you're walking up to the car from a reasonable distance back, you can see under it to see if there's any foreign liquids or anything dripping from the car, and of course that all 4 tyres are up. So a very simple pre-start check is walking up to the vehicle, having a look, a walk around, come back to the driver's side, and you can hop in your car and go. Then you have a service schedule. That's something that is determined by the manufacturer, and they will actually tell you how many kilometres you need to travel before you book it in for a service. But at Elders we have an additional requirement, which is a full vehicle check every 6 months. This is a sheet of paper and it gives you a very detailed view of all the things you need to check, and then that gets handed in as a formal way of recognising the check's been done. When you're getting ready to drive, seating is one of the most important things, obviously, along with attitude. It's really important to understand that you need to have 3 points of contact. That's going to be my left foot and my 2 shoulder blades. So the first thing I need to get right is the distance from the pedals and the height. So in this case, if I'm back too far, my feet are going to be flopping around and not be anywhere near the foot brace. So I'm going to come forward until my left foot naturally rests against the footrest. And if you're tall, your legs need to fall out to the side. That gives you better bracing as well. In this case, I'm feeling like I'm a little bit too high, so I'm going to bring the seat down a touch as well. And when you do that, sometimes it pulls you further away. In this case, 1 notch closer forward. Now I need to worry about my 2 shoulder blades. So I rest against the seat and I try and grab 12 o'clock on the wheel. And if you can see, as I grab for that, my shoulder's coming out of the seat. So to make myself completely square in the seat, the backrest has to come up. So here we go, let's get that one going. And that's going to feel reasonably upright if you're not used to it, but 110 degrees is ideal in the back. but there's one more thing to do, and that's with the steering wheel position. So I want to make sure it comes out towards me, but the real trick to this one is bring the steering wheel down so as the inside diameter of the wheel just sits over the dials. So I'm going as low as I can go, but I'm not obscuring dials. Now when I lock that off, I've done all of that. I've got a really good position here with my hands at 9 and 3, with the steering wheel low, all correctly set up. That means that my hands will be in line with my heart, which is also in line with my shoulder blades, and that is about as stable as I'm ever going to be. Just remember, we're trying to achieve 3 points of contact: left foot on the foot brace and both shoulder blades in the seat. With both hands on the wheel, there's my 3 points of contact. The steering wheel is one of the most important parts of the car to ensure you have control and stability at high speed. Ideally, your hands will finish around heart level to 9 and 3, and that can be sustained for a couple of hours. It's not meant to be sustained for any more than a couple of hours, because your driving energy starts to deplete after that time. And to maintain control at high speed, which is above 80 kilometres an hour, takes a lot of concentration. But one big no-no, holding the wheel at 12 at the very top of the wheel is not only unsafe for high-speed driving, it is also going to cause you serious harm and damage if you have airbag detonation, and you'll be struck by your own hand. Using the top half of the steering wheel these days is all gone. It's now 9 and 3. High-speed driving needs 9 and 3. 9 and 3 is the ideal position to rest at as well. This up here is unacceptable. This is completely unacceptable. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. This is spot on. As I come into this junction here, I'm going to use pull push. So right hand comes up, peels into the turn, and I can get the turn done smoothly in a real sort of fluid way. But if I need more and my speed comes down, I can get into hand over hand, which is more like this one. Another one to avoid is this, putting your hand inside the wheel to steer like that. That is a huge no-no. So we want to really avoid putting anything inside the wheel. Being a professional driver is also being a safe driver. It's up to you as an Elders driver to maintain a high standard, not just for the profile, but for the safety. One of the ways that you can really assess how safe you are is to how a bowl of water would behave if it was sitting in your lap. It should be constant. It shouldn't be sloshing around. So coming to a stop, for example, should feel nice and constant. But what most people do is they brake a little bit too late, and then they have to brake heavily at the end. Now, there are situations where this has a consequence. For example, you're driving on your typical country road, you're coming to a T-junction, and there's that chevron sign, the black and white arrows that you see. The big mistake is that people look at that chevron sign and then have to brake heavily and late. It's a really common practice. In fact, you'll see those signs knocked over from time to time. There's a T-junction coming up. It's very important to stop for this T-junction, particularly at harvest time with all these grain trucks running through. But the big mistake is people look at that chevron sign when they start to brake. I need to look down at the ground to stop. And if I've got people in the car with me, particularly a client, I want it to feel constant all the way down to a stop. Don't look at the chevron sign. Use that and acknowledge it as being the end of your road, but you must look down to stop. Don't look up to stop. You look up to go. One of the funny things is that people will often put extra effort in when there's a passenger in the car. Your driving should be identical whether they're in the car or not. And things like braking and your professional demeanour must be consistent whether you have people in the car or not. Another thing to consider about being professional and safe is the distance you maintain from vehicles that you follow. It's pretty normal that people will sit a little bit too close, around 1.2 seconds. Unfortunately, that doesn't consider braking events. When you have a 3-second safety gap, it might feel like it's too far, but in actual fact, that's the perfect number. And learning how to calculate a 3-second gap means that you are now able to manage and react. And the passenger that you've got isn't being distracted by being so close to other traffic. So just remember, being professional means that comfort and safety go hand in hand. Technology in cars is an ever-evolving thing. We're getting more and more and more assistance for drivers coming into cars. Some of this is turned on by the driver and some of it needs to be turned off by the driver. For example, lane keeping, some people find that too intrusive, so just with the hit of a button, it's turned off. Then you've got cruise control and active cruise control. Cruise control means it'll just do a minimum set speed regardless. Active cruise control will actually mirror the car in front if it's going slower. Now this is where the disengagement comes in. Let's say you're doing 110, the vehicle in front's doing 90. Before you know it, your car has gently slowed down to 90 kilometres an hour. So many drivers don't spot this. That's part of the disengagement. Even though the tech is handy, you disengage so much that you've lowered your speed by 20 kilometres an hour and haven't even noticed. It is absolutely normal to use cruise control when you're driving around Australian country roads. The problem is we overuse it. So cruise control should not be used in less than ideal situations, and that would indicate something like rain and twisty roads. So for example, going through this set of country roads now, this would be completely inappropriate to have cruise control on. Even though I'm comfortably doing 100 kilometres an hour, all I need to do is lift a little bit to take each turn, but that would suggest the cruise control would be too much. It's not ideal. With cruise control, people also have a tendency to get a bit lazy with their feet and their steering. And then you start to bring your feet back from the pedals. But throw in a mobile phone call, and now you've got three significant factors that are negatively impacting safe driving. If you must be on a mobile phone call while driving, at least be off cruise control. Another thing we're seeing is auto headlights, leaving your headlights on automatic. We've seen quite a number of cars driving around without their headlights on and just their daytime running lights because they've forgot to set their actual headlight setting. Check the lights to see that they are on, particularly if you're doing nighttime driving. Some cars even have an app for towing. When you hook your car up and put your trailer plug in, up on the screen there'll be a display for your car and the type of trailer and the weight you're towing. That's fantastic tech. You'll find that very, very handy, particularly with electric brakes. Then we have another type of tech. This is when the tech intervenes because you've lost control. Things like ABS, which is anti-lock braking, traction control, and then stability control. These three bits of tech are actually very important to understand. ABS was invented to give you steering control. A byproduct is it gives you a very healthy stopping distance. If you push the brake pedal too hard, you exceed the amount of grip you've got available to you, it will intervene. Now, if you come off the brakes at that point, you've come off the brakes. The car is just going to continue to roll. You have to maintain control by continuing to brake and steer. If you are facing an emergency, let's say kangaroos jumped out or an implement's pulled out onto the road, these are the times when it's perfectly okay to use and exploit the ABS. I'll count myself down and give you an example. On 3, 2, 1, and stop. All I had to do was maintain control through steering. ABS did all the hard work for me, and it pulled me up in a very short distance under complete control. Traction control is the exact opposite. It is to do with acceleration as opposed to braking. Whenever a tyre loses grip and starts to rotate at a different speed to the others, the technology will come in and fix that. In the case of traction control, it will apply the brakes. In the case of ABS, it will release the brakes. But both of them are there to give you steering control and drive control. Stability control is a very clever bit of technology. It will apply brakes to diagonally opposed parts of the car so as it will straighten up. If the car is sliding through the nose or the car is sliding through the tail, stability control will engage, straighten the car up, and the crucial mistake here that a lot of drivers make is that they don't steer to go back down the road again. All it's trying to do is help you. You still have to control the car. Technology doesn't wrap you up. You have to control the situation and understand that maybe you've overdriven, Maybe you've braked too hard, maybe you've misjudged the grip available to you, but you still have to give the car instruction to steer. One of the things that can occur on gravel, but also understanding how this tech works, is traction control. Traction control is actually a thing called drive control. It works on the amount of grip. But because the grip is lower on gravel, there's often a tendency to overdrive gravel. And so easily, the car can just go into a slide. And that's from using too much power and going too quickly. So we need the traction control and stability control to be working. So I'll now re-engage it at exactly the same speed, which is overdriving, and you can look at the difference in the car's behaviour. So now with all the tech hooked up, coming in at the same speed, which is still too quick, and throttling on, and the car really remains mostly safe and straight. It has to slide a little bit before it picks up that there's a problem, then it'll intervene and cut the power. Sometimes it'll even use the brakes to slow you right up. But you know you've gone beyond grip if that little light flashes saying stability control or traction control. It means you've lost control momentarily. At Elders we do a lot of loading of product and equipment into the back of a ute, and we also do it into a trailer. There's a common misunderstanding that you might have the ability to carry, let's say, 300 or 400 kilos in the tray of your ute. This might not be true. We have a thing called gross vehicle mass, or GVM for short. Now, GVM is established by the manufacturer with a standard car and no accessories on it. So let's say, for argument's sake, you had the ability to put 500 kilograms in the tray of your car. Now, if you've got a 50 kilogram bull bar, if you've got 3 people in the car with you, all weighing 100 kilos each, they all must be included in the GVM. Now, all of a sudden, you can't carry 400 in the back. When you're overloaded, you're unroadworthy. When you're unroadworthy, you are taking that liability on yourself. So GVM is a very important thing to understand. GCM, or gross combination mass, is when we have a car and a trailer to hook up. So the trailer has its own compliance plate, and on that compliance plate will tell you how much that trailer weighs and how much it's capable of carrying. You might have 1,000 litres of glyphosate to put on. There's another factor here, and that is, in this case, a thing called specific gravity. So 1,000 litres doesn't equal 1,000 kilograms. This is now pushing up around 1,400 kilograms. So that's another calculation we have to factor in. Once it goes on the trailer, it also needs to be 10% forward of the centre line. This means that the overall weight of the trailer, including in this case the glyphosate that we're carrying, 10% of that weight goes through onto the ball. Now that becomes additional weight for the car. So we have to add that 250 kilograms in this case onto the car. So we have to calculate absolutely everything that's going onto the car and onto the trailer as a combined mass, hence gross combination mass. And you cannot exceed that number. So we've loaded this bulker bag onto the trailer. We've positioned it just that little bit forward by no more than 10%. But the real problem with this particular bulker bag is making sure that we've contained it. That's why we've crisscrossed 2 straps across the front and another 2 parallel going over. When you tighten the whole thing down, we're trying to make sure that the straps are almost like a guitar string when you pluck at it, really super tight. But at the end of the day, if we have a major braking event, we have to make sure that the load remains exactly where it is. And you should always plan for the worst and hope for the best. In this case, an emergency stop at 80 or 100 k's, if that's the speed you choose to drive at, the load must not move. This is an example of another common product which is transported at Elders. This IBC of glyphosate is, let's say for mathematical purposes, 1,500 kilo. In this case, we've got a removable rubber floor, and the two straps you can clearly see go over the top of the IBC. They don't go over the bladder. It's tied down really firmly. It still has to deal with that 80 to 100k emergency stop. But don't forget, we have this loaded. We have the 1,500 kilo on the back. We have the trailer. 10% of that must now be calculated onto the tow ball for ball weight, which is also part of your overall carrying capacity for the ute. Now that we've got all that organised, stand back and have a look, and is it nice and level? This is going to reduce the likelihood of getting a sway. If you're getting a sway, it can be due to the weight being too far forward, the weight being too far back, and it could also be how you're steering it. We've spoken already about having your hand at 12 on the wheel. Something as simple as that can incite trailer sway. Now finally, that's going to bring us to electric brakes. And with a dial, you can actually bring on more brake or less brake. So when the trailer is empty, you have less. When the trailer is full, you can wind it up to have more rear braking through the trailer. As soon as you feel the first sway, that's when you must deal with it. When it develops into the third sway, you get so much inertia, that's when they start to come around on you. So it's very important. Both hands on the wheel, feel the stability and the balance through the steering. And as soon as you get that imbalance, back off, brake, and if it's severe, apply the trailer brakes alone, and that will pull them apart and make them straight. Fatigue is an ever-present risk in our life with the amount of kilometres that we're doing every year. Fatigue has a few high points in that first thing in the morning, mid-afternoon, and into the evening. Sleep, food, the job you're doing, stress that you're under, even family stress. These things all take energy and can all relate to fatigue. How do we recognise this? Firstly, you start to feel sleepy. When you're sleepy, your cognizance starts to go down. So that means that you're not thinking as clearly anymore. Your vision drops, your decision making falls over, and you'll do something silly like justify driving for another half hour. But fatigue has a really nasty relationship to alcohol. Firstly, drinking alcohol and the knock-on effect with fatigue, but the way your brain behaves when you're fatigued can be as high as equivalent to 0.05 when you're driving drunk versus driving fatigued. They are as bad as each other. If you're feeling tired, it is absolutely crucial you pull over and freshen up. Fatigue, it is a very silent killer. So the shadows are starting to really draw across the road, and it's getting to that time of day when wildlife is going to start moving. It starts to take away the continuity that we really enjoy with our vision to be able to constantly see what's going on, and we pick up on little movements. That's when we really start to struggle picking up on wildlife. We all know at Elders that the possibility of hitting wildlife is extremely high. We can significantly reduce that risk. Well, firstly, you come off cruise control. That's the first thing. The second thing is you need to give yourself an opportunity to look more into the bushes. You need to then dedicate your vision more into the bush. If I have been seeing kangaroos, let's say, if I've gone past a sign, if I see a carcass on the road, that is the final tick in the box. That's when I slow down. So even slowing from 100 down to 80 is all you need to do. And quite literally, the possibility of hitting a kangaroo or deer or wombat almost dissipates down to nearly nothing. Now, unfortunately, if a collision with a kangaroo or any type of wildlife is inevitable, it is absolutely foolhardy not to use the brakes. You must use full braking effort. Anything you collide with must be done at the lowest possible speed. It is true that every now and then you hear the odd story about a kangaroo coming through a windscreen. They are unbelievably rare, and you're much better off hitting a kangaroo at a lower speed so you can at least get home. So this is simply a demonstration of the difference between speeds and stopping distances. So we're going to do 100 kilometres an hour with an emergency stop applied at a given point. The intention is that we then will do another speed to compare it. So here we are at 100. It's too fast for the conditions. And here we go, kangaroo strike coming now. Bang! So as you can see, because we weren't paying attention to the environment, because we were just doing the normal 100, we just ploughed straight through that kangaroo at 60 k's. That is a major hit. You continue at 100, you hit it at 60. It's a big crash. So we've made some observations, heightened kangaroo time, reduced the speed to 80, so now we're just cruising along at 80, and you'll see that just as the kangaroo jumps out and appears, I'll jump on the brakes now, and we didn't hit the kangaroo. What is interesting, at this point here where we've stopped, the car doing 100 is still doing 60. That's why the collision with the kangaroo was such a major event. And remember, you collide on average with a kangaroo at 60 k's when your original speed was 100. That's why 80 k's is a crucial speed to choose in high-risk situations for kangaroos. Parking is overrepresented in our incident rates. Now, it's all good and well to say, oh, I just scraped a bollard or I just tacked onto a bumper as I went past it. Could have been a person, could have been a dog, could have been a child. Generally speaking, it's safer to reverse in. You're already warm to driving, your brain is around it, you're practiced. So reversing in is generally the safer thing to do, because when you drive out, you're cold to driving, you can see what could be a problem when you're pulling out of a car park. Every now and then it makes more sense to bring the nose in. But a couple of picky things that are really worth focusing on here. Try and be square in the car park. Try and be in the car park. And of course, have your wheels straight when you finish parking. That, believe it or not, is a very important part to not crashing when you pull out of the car park. If you have the wheel completely turned and you start reversing, before you know it, you've put your bonnet into someone else's door, and that is completely avoidable. One more thing. If you have to negotiate a really tight area and there could be bollards or concrete pillars or cars nearby, it's your back tyres that are at the pivot point. So if you're in a really tight area, when you pull out of that area, you really have to be aware of where the rear tyres are before you make a sharp turn. You have to get the nose of the car well past the obstacle before you turn. Some of us are exposed to particularly remote locations when driving. If you were to experience a really catastrophic mechanical event, or God forbid, a really nasty crash, you may be stuck in a place which is remote and you don't have any phone contact. If you do have phone contact, that's the thing that you use. If you don't have phone contact, you may need to consider a personal locator beacon, or otherwise known as an EPIRB, which will, once activated, send out an emergency distress signal. You need to have clear open skies, so you can't be under trees. And once you activate it, that's it, they're coming. Don't leave this behind. Stay with it and stay with your car. That's always good advice. If you don't have an EPIRB, you can always go for your phone. But you have to have an iPhone 14 or above. And by pressing for a call, this icon will come up, and that will then hook you up to the satellites that this will also hook you up to. So this is a very, very similar thing to this EPIRB. Just remember though, once you hook these in and you've sent the message, you've got to stand by with your car, with your phone, with your EPIRB until the emergency responders turn up. So one of the least common but most risky situations is when two wheels are on the gravel and you're forced into braking. In this situation, it is absolutely crucial that your hands are at 9 and 3. And you continue with your braking effort, but you need to look down the road, down the white line in this case, to maintain steering control. So I've been sent off the road, and I'll start doing full-blown braking now. and just managing the car and steering it to keep it straight. We'll now do a poor example. So on this occasion, I'm going to have a little panic and I'm going to come off the brakes. So same speed, same everything. As I drop onto the gravel, I'll hit the brakes now and come off the brakes, and you can actually feel that lurch back onto the road again and actually crossed the white line. That's why it's important to remain braking. And now this final example, it'll be in between the two. I'm going to keep braking, but I'm not going to engage in steering as much as I should, and you'll see the car slowly get pulled back into oncoming traffic. So again, same deal, 100 kilometers an hour, dropping 2 wheels over, and brake hard, but don't do anything for steering, and it gets pulled back onto the road. We also get a lot of exposure to gravel. Now, gravel is a whole new experience. We don't have white lines dividing us, and the grip levels are dramatically lower, up to 50% less than you would do on tarmac, let's say. So doing 100 kilometers an hour on gravel is at least doing 130 relative to tarmac. And the other thing with gravel is because it's an unstable surface, there's a likelihood that you'll start to get that floating feeling. Let's say my speed comes up to 80 kilometers an hour. I will definitely start to get that floating feeling. And the main thing there is that I've actually lost grip at that point, so I'm no longer completely in control. I'm partly the passenger. When that does happen, it is crucial to bring your speed back down so as you're no longer floating. Floating is, technically speaking, out of control because all 4 wheels are no longer rotating at the same speed. Now, sometimes you can fix that by engaging high range. Now, you do that while you're moving. So there we go, I've got high range engaged, and that means that I can now use the grip of all 4 tyres by improving my traction, which is what you do when you engage 4-wheel drive. But the other thing with gravel is where you position on the road. You're always trying to find the clear patch and trying to drive out of the corrugations. And of course, corrugations are another thing. That's a big variable. Sometimes you're better off slowing down, and other times you're better off increasing your speed. But the problem with corrugations is you are in touch with the planet less often, so it has the same effect as going faster. And of course, another very important thing is keeping left on crests, and that may even need you to back off a little bit to go left because you could be in the loose stuff. Here we are approaching a crest. I'm just going to ease it off a little, move over to the left. 9 times out of 10 it's clear and I can move back again, but it's that 1 in 10 that'll catch you out. That's why you need to be consistent with these preventative measures. So even at this fairly mundane speed on gravel, we are kicking up enough dust that all we're going to do is put dust into the car, into the radiator, and completely affecting my vision in a very negative way. So I can't see if there's a bend, I can't see if there's a crest, I can't see if there's anything coming towards me. So you need to back off to the point where you can at least see, and that will depend on the weather, it will depend on the road, it will depend on wind, but you need to back off to the point where you can see. Okay, so overtaking is the single most risky thing you're intentionally going to do. In a country road like this, where we've got just a simple 2 lanes and lots of double white lines, so we can't overtake. So then we need to wait for the opportunity to appear. Now, if you're too close to that car or that truck, you won't be able to see. So you have to sit a reasonable distance back to plan and see what's going on. And if you're in a situation where you're overtaking something like a B double, and it's doing around the 100 mark and you're doing 110, it's going to take you close to 1,400 metres and 45 seconds to overtake. That is an awful long time. Now the temptation at that point is to overspeed. Now no one can endorse speeding, and police are pinging people for speeding whilst overtaking. As unfair as that may appear, it is still breaking the law. So take your time, plan for it, look ahead, make sure that you've got the time, make sure you've got the vision, make sure you're indicating early, and do it as a really relaxed process. So typical overtaking scenario where we're on a fairly narrow country road and double white lines. So the first job I need to do is make sure it's clear in front and behind, so I don't overtake with someone else's overtaking. I'm going to indicate early because I'm just indicating my intentions. Make sure it's clear. Once it's clear, bring the speed up. Don't look at the car anymore, look up the road. When I'm next to it, indicator goes back on. I can see the car in my rear vision mirror, and that's a safe time to pull back over again. If you've got people in the car, they should not feel you change lanes. It should be one smooth exercise, because this is the single most dangerous thing that you're going to do intentionally. So when you're on a gravel road, it's not necessary to simply engage four-wheel drive as a matter of course. So when do you actually engage four-wheel drive? Well, if it's super slippery or you're towing and it's slippery, then that might be the time you want to engage high range. But we're about to enter a really marshy area. So before I stop, I'm going to engage high range while we're still moving, because that's how the transmission prefers to engage high range. But to engage low range, just before I head into this little area here, I've got to come to a stop. I must engage neutral, around to 4 low, and it shows up on the screen we've got 4 low, and I'm just going to ease off the brake. Because things are serious, I'm just going to let the engine and the transmission do all the hard work for me. So we're just going to gently idle through, and that's as fast as you should ever go when you're in a low grip, low range situation. And this could take me a couple of minutes just to idle all the way down here. But the beautiful thing is that if my wheels do start to spin, if I do feel like I'm getting bogged, all you got to do is this: come to a stop, engage reverse, ease off the brake, and it will just roll straight back out of that problem again, because you used grip to get there. You didn't use momentum. Momentum is the enemy. And that's as easy as it is. You should really never get into trouble, particularly on a paddock or a farm, if you just use grip and low speed.